Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Let us move on to 1.02. Board members, if you've had a chance to look at the agenda thoroughly, I would ask if you do not have any changes or amendments for approval of the agenda for tonight.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Probably moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We now, all ayes. Aye. Okay, you're right. Let's back up just a minute. Ms. Thompson, you're right. We're so used to having that. Okay, go right ahead.
Well, if we want to make the agenda, do we have to unapprove it?
Yeah, I guess we do. Just
What would you like to do?
make an amendment.
To policy?
Mhm.
We do that when we get to.
Well, that's what I thought we did too. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
my apologies.
That's okay.
No problem.
That's okay. We good? Now, where was I? We good. All right, now we're at 2.01. At this time, we'll entertain public comments concerning school matters, and we will not have this at the end of our session. So do we have anyone that would like to approach the board at this time? Please feel free to come up, state your name and your address.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Lauren Kirshner, and I'm entering my 7th year as a school counselor at Central Elementary. Could I start? Thank you. I'm entering my 7th year as a school counselor at Central, and I'm also the parent of an ACPS student. In my role, I teach students that in order to make responsible choices, there are certain steps we must follow. We have to identify the goal, gather information, data to come up with options, consider the consequences of those options, and ultimately make the decision to be followed closely by evaluating that choice. Your goal is to decide how to educate students in the safest way possible. I do not envy your position. I would like to take the opportunity to thank those of you who voted at the last meeting to require face coverings, regardless of social distancing, and those of you who visited buildings this week to see for yourselves to inform your decision. I'd like to commend ACPS leadership and the team of educators who've been working tirelessly to develop and implement a plan, multiple plans and contingency plans. I believe that we've done the best job possible, but we cannot be fully responsible for the current conditions in our community. We have data that proves the numbers are rising quickly. 196 today, I think. I trust in the first common belief that Dr. Arnold presented. So if the number one priority is safety, then that needs to remain the priority. Our kids cannot learn if they are not safe. We have evidence from other schools that have tried to reopen and have not been able to keep students and staff safe. The safest option is to have students learn 100% remotely until numbers start to decline. Now, in either case, learning will not be ideal. In order to be safer physically in school, students will not get most of the things that make in-person instruction more effective. Things like proximity, collaboration, hands-on instruction. So ultimately, to educate students safely in school, these advantages are minimized. So you're left with two options. Neither one will have ideal educational outcomes. But one of those choices needlessly puts students and staff at risk. Thank you all for your service and the opportunity.
Thank you.
My name is Lauren Ballin. I live in Forest. I'm giving you a warning. I may cry. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. But I'm very passionate about what I do. I am an art educator at Elin and Temperance Elementary Schools. This is my 9th year of teaching, and those 9 years have all been in ACPS. I'm currently in our ACPS Innovation cohort. Just completed a year in Arts Leadership Academy based out of Pittsburgh. I was nominated for Teacher of the Year last school year, and I will be our next regional president of Virginia Art Educators Association. I'm here to express my worry about some individuals within our schools that will be seeing every student within a school within a week. Some may even see multiple schools worth of students, myself included in this. I do understand that schedules of these resource teachers, instructional assistants, reading specialists, and so many others are up to the individual schools, and I know that both my schools are trying to plan the safest way for us to service our students. I am very grateful for all the work that has been done. I'm greatly worried about what is happening at Elin. It has been said that no hybrid space will have more than 50 students. I do not believe that Elin meets this. Our numbers have gone down due to remote numbers, but not enough to meet under 50 in the hybrid space. I understand the chances of exposure with proper mask usage, social distancing, etc., and following all policies should be small, but the reality is that everybody in the school will be exposed to everyone else in the schools and their families. We are greatly hurting the exposure with everything in place. However, I'm going to ballpark some numbers for you, because many times the numbers mentioned for exposure are in reference to general education teachers. I will be seeing 2 homerooms of classes at a time. Let's say on average a homeroom is 8, which is lower than reality. So I have 16 students in my class. I will be seeing 6 classes a day, so 96 students a day. That means I basically will be seeing 100 people a day, and nearly a different 100 the next day and the day after that. Luckily at Temperance, I will not be seeing this many per day in the one day that I'm there. I know our administration is doing the best they can, but at Elin we simply don't have the space, nor do we have enough people to curb the exposure down. Even if I only see one set of 6 classes in a week, I'm still seeing 100 people in that week, plus the number of students I would see at Temperance. This solution couldn't be offered to the other This solution couldn't be offered to the other staff within the building either, and they will be exposed to much higher numbers. There are similar situations through our school system. Even if the hybrid situation isn't the same as ours, they are still seeing hundreds of students a week. I just want you to know and hopefully give a voice to those of us that do see a large amount of students. I came here today because I love what I do. I care about every child every day, but I also care about every staff member every day. And I wanted to inform you that there are staff members that see hundreds of students a day, and I want our voices to be heard to see what we can do to limit our exposure for our school community. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Cassisi. I appreciate having the opportunity to come out here and speak. I know you all truly want the best for our students, which is why I'm here. This is a bit of a hot take, but I like the way we're going back to school as of right now. But considering how COVID cases are rising and surrounding areas are going virtual, I fear we're going down that path. I'd like to explain why going virtual is ultimately a bad thing. For starters, quite a few students find it easy to learn in person and would be willing to go back to school even with the risk of COVID. And hands-on learning is also a bit of an issue because we wouldn't really be able to tackle stuff like knitting, for example, through virtual classes. And even for those who would be willing to go virtual, they still have the option to learn online, and I am grateful for that. Regardless, motivation to actually learn from home is another problem. School is a learning environment. There isn't anything there that is meant to distract students. At home, that's not really the case. We have things like phones, TVs, books, and all of the sort. Distraction isn't the only motivational problem, though. Some students simply don't care about their grades, and even for those who do, they can just keep their notes off to the side and look off of them, which sort of takes away from the learning aspect of school. There are also some students who really care but can't get the proper education because the parents don't help them due to their lack of care for their kids. This leads me to my next point. A massive problem with going full virtual is that domestic abuse rates and in turn suicide rates would increase. According to the CDC, both domestic abuse and suicide rates due to places like schools being closed are individually higher than the COVID death rate itself. Virtual school allows this to continue because they have nowhere to go. They use school as a place to open up about these things and find the necessary help. If needed, to keep schools open, we can have mask mandates for a longer period of time, or more extreme, or we could socially distance more often. Whatever is necessary to keep us in school, I am willing to do. If you are discussing going virtual at any point, please do take my thoughts of going to school in person into consideration. Thank you.
Be safe. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Arnold, Madam Chair, members of the board. I appreciate you letting me speak tonight. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the upcoming school year. I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done as board members and also the administrators, teachers, custodians, bus drivers, cafeteria workers that have fought the fight to get us where we are today.
Can you give us your name and all that?
Tim Hoden.
Even though I know you.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I said that. I'm sorry, man. I understand the situation is very fluid. I ask you to please remain on course and allow every student and parent their choice. All those that have selected the virtual option have their reasons. We should feel no ill will toward them and allow them to respectfully choose that option. Likewise, students to return in person should be given that choice. On March 13th, students were not given a choice, and that decision put many students behind. I believe that after March 13th, the world remembered how important teachers were and that they were essential to the education of all children. As we work to close the achievement gap, situations like this fight against that process and cause the gap to remain. Many students need the school setting to thrive. Throw in the lack of internet for many, and that gap widens. Again, the 65% or so that have selected to come to school face-to-face should be permitted that choice, and to have the high school, that means at the high school level, about a third of the students would attend every day. To change course and vote to attend all virtual takes away that choice and an opportunity. I am confident that Dr. Arnold and his administrative team have precautions in place as well as mitigation strategies that will ensure the safest protocol for staff and students. On a personal note, I have two seniors that are here with us, Parker and Nicholas, that want to attend school every day. So we hope that they can at least attend 2 days a week like your plan is at the time. I am saddened for the senior class last year, losing the last months of their senior year, including activities, prom, as well as athletics. To not allow this group to attend, even on a limited basis, would be a mistake. We understand that there will be issues and positive cases, but again, I feel the administration has developed a mitigation plan that addresses this. You have added a mask policy, and although wearing a mask all day is not comfortable, it's a proven fact to help prevent the spread and to help us fight the fight to stay open. Another consideration of the students receiving special education services, parents with smaller children that need schools to open so they can return to work, and the students in career tech education classes. Students in classes such as welding, building trades, they cannot learn this material virtually. They need to be in school with hands-on. Not opening could cause a financial strain to the community. I understand there is a risk in opening, however, there is an argument that not opening could be a greater risk. In closing, I ask you to stay the course you've already chosen to allow those that choose to return to school in person that choice. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Do we have anyone else who would like to approach the board at this time? Please feel free to do so. Seeing none, I will at this time close this portion of the public comments. Even though we do not talk back at the particular time that the comments are relayed to us, all of these matters are taken into consideration. And some of these things, I believe, might be discussed later on as we go through the meeting. So we thank you for everything that you've brought to our attention. At this time, we'll move to action item 3.01.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a motion to remove some items from action item 3.01. I would like to remove AC, AG, GBA, JFHA, and JB or we can speak further on those items and move to make a motion for the rest of the items.
Okay, you heard Ms. Bird's comments on 3.01. She at this time would like to remove some of the policies to have further discussion at our next meeting. Do we have a second on that? Okay, we have probably moved in second to remove those alphabets. I won't try to repeat again from 3.01. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. We shall bring that back at the next meeting just for more clarification and information. That's all that is, Dr. Wells and Dr. Arnold. Okay, moving right along to 4.01 and 4.02.
Did y'all make a motion to approve the rest?
Oh,
Was that
do we want to
combined?
all or just? I was going to ask, was it easier to bring them all off?
Well, she just removed.
I believe she removed them
I thought she
and
removed-
approved the rest of them.
Okay, so that was one motion.
Yeah.
Okay, did you get that? All right, thank you.
Okay.
For clarification, it's policy JB.
Ms. Berry, would you repeat those one more time? Thank you.
AC, GBA, JFHA, and also JB.
Ms. Dr. Wells.
Sorry about that, there's a lot to read off.
Okay.
All right, now, let's see. 4.01 and 4.02, the consent agenda. Do we have any discussion about that? If not, I'll ask for a vote of approval.
And to approve, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, been probably moved in second. That was Mr. Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Let's move on to 5.01.
Dr. Wells.
Dr. Wells.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm going to go a few things from this section tonight. First, I want to start with construction and update you on our construction, and all projects have been completed. Healing was completed this past week with, I believe they had a walkthrough this week, and all the restrooms there have been completed and everything's there. The tennis courts are complete. All other projects have been completed. Also, under this section, I want to code the supply list. So in your place, there should be a spreadsheet that goes over the supply list of information that we've ordered so far this year, either have taken in, have in stock or have placed on order. So you can see, one question you had earlier was with the bottle filling stations. So those have been ordered. There is a back order. We expect them here within 3 to 6 weeks, and they should be shipping in 8 at a time. So we'll get 8. And then a week later, we should get 8 more, and so forth. We'll install the first 8, then we'll install the second 8, and so forth. We will be shutting off, we're in the process of shutting off all the water fountains in the division, so those water fountains will be shut off. We'll be installing the bottle stations as they come in, but there is a back order on those. We will encourage the schools do not have bottle stations. We'll work with principals to encourage the parents and students to have bottle stations. As you see, the next section is disinfectants, and the case of disinfectants we have multiple types of disinfectants. We have those in stock. Those have been started to be distributed to schools. Disinfectant wipes. Disinfectant wipes. We have ordered 727 cans. We have dispersed 585 cans of 252 on back order. Then face masks, we have disposable masks we've ordered N95 masks, and we ordered face cloth masks. We have enough, about 145,000 disposable masks. If we gave one to each student a day, that would last us about 30 days. So it sounds like a lot, but really it doesn't cover when you think about one per student per day, if that's the case. So in the meantime, we've also ordered cloth face masks. So students will receive a cloth face mask, as well as all faculty and staff will receive one cloth face mask. And then they can bring their own personal face masks if they so desire. They will be given one cloth face mask per staff member and per student. And then the N95 masks, those are for our healthcare folks and our first responders. So they'll have the proper fitted N95 masks. I'll talk about that more in a few seconds. Again, we also have ordered face shields for some of our staff as well. So you can see we've gone through here. I won't go through this verbatim, but
Total, about $295,000 has been allocated towards PPE thus far. This will get us, we think, to about December, and then we'll have a second order for second semester, but we didn't want to order a year's worth, because really, we're kind of shooting in the dark as the amount of material we'll use. We're estimating this, how much we're going to use, but really won't know until we get in the building and see how much material we're using. So we didn't want to order a year's worth of material up front. So we have enough to get us through the first semester, and then about October, November, we'll have some good ideas of how much we're using on a daily basis. We'll order second semesters before we begin. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer that.
Board members?
Is this from our funds, or is this from the CARES from the county, or?
Right now, it's going to be with the carryover funds that we have. There's still discussion with the members of the Amherst County Board of Supervisors on whether they're going to pick up additional costs of the PPE products.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Wells on this? Thank you so much. Very interesting.
So we want to give you a little bit of it. We didn't want to give you we didn't get the whole big spreadsheet, but to give you a little bit of idea where we are and what we're facing there. So I just want y'all to be updated on that aspect. The next I have is revisions to the policy manual. We have new policies for this month, and those are in board docs. And I would ask this to be a first read for these policies, and then we'll bring them back to you next month. If there are questions on these, please let me know throughout the month. I'll be glad to try to address them through the month and update you as we go through, and then they'll be coming to you for approval in September.
Yes, sir.
Next is 5.03, which is this plan. We are required by the Code of Virginia to present the school crisis emergency management medical emergency response plan to the board annually for review by August 31st of each year. Many of you know the ACPS plan was overhauled during the 2018-2019 school year and was presented for the board for approval in 2019-20 school year. This past year, there were no major revisions or adjustments to the plan. We intend to review the plan again this coming school year for open other updates for this coming school year. And we'll make sure we also include, with new code, the fire marshal needs to be involved, as well as EMS and Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office was involved in the last discussion, and those, the fire marshal and the EMS have reviewed the plan, but this coming year we'll involve them in the planning process and go through the process in more detail. But this year's based on the board review, and if y'all review, then I can send information to DCGS and y'all review the plan for this year. Are there any questions? I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions for Dr. Wells? Thank you.
All right, next is 5.04, which is the contact tracing procedures. So a little bit of history on this. When we wrote our Phase 2 and Phase 3 guidance, we were under the assumption that the Virginia Department of Health would have enough staff to really assist us in the contact tracing of our students and staff if they had a case of COVID-19. In the past several weeks, we have come to the realization that the VDH is pretty much overwhelmed with the number of cases cropping up in our part of the state, and they may not be able to assist us as fully or in a timely manner as we may need them to assist us when we were looking at cases. So we developed this, Patricia and myself worked together on developing some procedures for contact tracing that covers us in our schools. So, for example, if there is a case reported to us tomorrow, the VDH might not do their investigation for 2 weeks. We can't go 2 weeks if our staff with a positive case without making some decisions on what they need to do. So we put procedures in place to cover that so we can make sure we're keeping our staff and our students safe. So that's kind of the reason behind it. We still continue to work with the health department and do the best we can, but we want to assist them with this process so that we don't have staff members or students in the building without going through the contact tracing process. So the guidelines, get to my guidelines. So the guidelines and procedures, basically we developed a committee, and that committee consists of Dr. Arnold, myself, Jim Gallagher, Ms. Patrone, the building administrators, and the school nurses. And we will, when the case is reported, we will start conducting an investigation as far as who the students were around, or who the staff member was around, the time they were around those individuals, and go through the process of doing that. Ms. Patrone and myself have both taken a contact tracing course through Johns Hopkins University, and all our school nurses are currently taking that course through Johns Hopkins University, so we can have certification stating that we have some background knowledge about how to conduct contact tracing. So the first thing we're going to do is notify the health department. If they can assist us, we'd like them to assist us. However, if they cannot assist us, we have the means necessary to make those types of decisions. So if the school is notified that a student or staff member has tested positive, the administrator will immediately notify me by phone, and then notify the others by email. They have certain standards they have to go forth and how they will do that contacting. Again, we will contact the health department to request confirmation, and if the test was positive, and request assistance in the investigation. The school administrator will pull the affected individual's schedule and all rosters of classes, and we'll start doing our investigation from that point with the student. We then go through a set of processes and steps that we'll follow, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, they're in your document there. We'll go through these steps and make sure we follow these steps. So we'll go through these 7 steps, and then we'll notify the individuals if we feel they should be at work or not at work, or if they should stay home. Basically, if someone has COVID-19, obviously they're going to stay home. The question becomes, what if someone has contact with them, and how long they need to stay out of school? So we're going to look at the amount of time they were in contact with them, if it's a passing, were they wearing masks or they're not wearing masks, how close in contact were they, how much time was spent between those 2 individuals, and then we use that to determine whether or not someone has to quarantine or isolate themselves based off of that information. So we have procedures in place. Mr. President, did I leave anything out that you need? Okay. And we would just follow those procedures, and hopefully we'll get through this. We have had to place staff on quarantine, and we have had to have staff on isolation due to COVID-19. So it is here. So we are putting steps to make sure we're taking care of that, doing our best to keep people safe. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
That you're going to be contacting the health department for their assistance initially, if they can help. Are they going to be able to give you a, yes, we'll be able to help, or we're going to put you on the back burner, or will you know right away, or how does it work?
It depends on the case and their workload. We have contacted them with each case, and we have been doing the work ourselves for the most part.
But Mr. Terry, I'll tell you that on Monday, the area superintendents met with the Dr. Gately, and he has, because we had this issue, and he has asked us to call him directly. So I would imagine we would get that answer from him, because he understands how important it is for us to do this quickly. And so, and we are now meeting with him once a week.
Any other questions for Dr. Wells on this, well-written procedure guidelines?
We just felt it was important for us to have procedures in place, because we know with college is coming back in, and the number of cases already spiking in some of our areas, that the health department is going to have a large amount of work to do, and anything we can do to ensure the safety of our students is going to do so. That's kind of why we put these in place.
It looks like you have a good staff, good amount of staff. You have enough help here? Feel confident you have enough help?
We're working on that too. Yeah,
we shall see as numbers go. Right now, yes, but if numbers do increase, it may require us to get more folks to assist in the process.
Well, I didn't say you're inadequate, I just didn't want to overdo anything.
No, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
If no further questions, move on, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. 5.05 was space coverings. So today, to start that off, and I have that is also in board docs, the document there, but today, all ACPS nurses and first responders, over 50 staff, were fitted for their N95 masks. I want to publicly thank the Amherst County Public Safety Department for their assistance in fitting the masks. Mr. Stevie Bryant conducted the fitting for all of our employees. So we want to thank him and the Amherst EMS and Public Safety for their assistance in that process. For those that have been fitted for an N95, it's a process where they have to warm it to your face and then do a smoke test to see if it's sealed properly. We didn't have any issues with our staff, so I think our staff felt more confident after the fitting, knowing that the masks do what they're supposed to do. And so I just want to publicly thank the Public Safety Department and Mr. Bryan for his assistance. At the last school board meeting, there was concern regarding how the school division would enforce the wearing of face coverings. Part of the discussion centered on disciplinary consequences for students who do not wear face coverings. And as a result, we developed some guidelines to assist teachers and administrators with enforcing the face covering requirement. We are meeting with our administrators on the 21st to review this with them, and also we'll meet with staff as needed to go over the face covering guidelines. So as we know, COVID-19 does spread mainly through respiratory droplets, and so the face coverings are the main thing that's going to protect our students and our staff from those droplets. We wanted to make sure, though, that teachers use a layer of common sense when dealing with this, so there will not be discipline strictly, he was not wearing a face covering, or she was not wearing a face covering in class. The consequence would come after being asked and reminded and worked with, phone calls to home and so forth, of it being a defiance issue and not complying with school board regulation. That's where it becomes, any discipline becomes met. But our goal is to work with our teachers on classroom management and our administrators on how to work with teachers and their parents and the students in dealing with this with age-appropriate conversations. We know a younger student, they're going to be adjusting their face and pulling their face, especially early year. We understand that. The older students will too. And like I said last month, I'm guilty of that sometimes myself. So we understand that. It's just a matter of when it becomes a defiance issue. If I've asked you multiple times, it becomes a point where you're doing it, or there's profanity involved with, I'm not doing it, and that type of thing. That becomes a profanity violation or a defiance issue, not a he was not wearing a face mask issue. So I wanted you to be aware of what we've developed for that, and I'll be glad to answer the questions regarding that, but we feel we have a common sense approach to this so that if there is an issue, teachers have the resources they need to go through and really think about this from that perspective, so to speak.
So if it arose to a level of defiance for not having the mask, would it be no profanity, nothing like that, just I'm not wearing a mask? Would it be something of just, well, you're going to have to do all virtual? Because I don't want to, I personally don't want to see a suspension on somebody's record because of this, and with 12 months from now may be insignificant.
Right. Yeah, we would have those conversations where if you don't feel you can meet the expectations of where the first consequence is a warning across the board. So, if it comes to that first conversation, if you don't feel you can do this, or if you have objections to this, then these are the options we have for you. That'd be part of the conversation with the students and their parents if it becomes to that level. We're hoping just by general conversations with the students, hey, this is what we need to wear, you understand that, and some public service announcements going on. We need to get going, that we will get that out there, get the message out to them. But if there's a reason why they feel they cannot wear it, then we'll have those conversations. These are some alternates you can do as opposed to getting a consequence for this.
And that would have been the same for the bus as well, that if you couldn't do that, then you would have to find your own transportation. Right? If it became something that you just were unwilling to do.
I had a quick question, Mr. Wells. What about our students that have sensory issues, or disabled students? Right. What are they going to do?
So Mr. Neighbors will work with the IEP teams, and they're developing IEP specific plans for those students, so I can have him speak to that if you would.
And one more quick question that ties in with that. What are we going to be doing for servicing our students for like, you know, getting speech lessons? How are we going to be able to, and my daughter was severely delayed in speech. You know, they would actually put things in her mouth to show her to move her tongue, this and that. How are we going to be issuing those types of services?
Absolutely. We have an update from the board later this evening on general services for students with disabilities. But ultimately, we are going to make individual decisions, as Dr. Wells was saying, based on a student needs when it comes to wearing of the mask and other PPE that may be appropriate. When it comes to delivery of services, we've been working with our staff as recently as this week on protocols that need to be in place to ensure we're still following the health mitigation protocol to deliver the appropriate services for students. That does include certain barriers that we purchase differentiated PPE that allow students to speak out with something such as speech and the rest. So we are trying to provide multiple opportunities for staff to be able to still do things they need to do for students to work appropriately.
And what about the social distancing? Are the teachers going to be able to get up with the students to be able to see their like facial movements and things like that?
And that's part of why we purchased some of these other items, including those plexiglass liners, to allow us to close distance again within health mitigation protocols until we're still providing that safety for staff and students and still able to deliver those services if they're healthy.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions regarding the mask procedures?
I think as we go throughout the night, we'll be hearing more, reinforcing more about the special education needs and involved with that. I want to thank you for this, and I think you used a good word when we got started, common sense and understanding. And we want parents to know that I did observe one day this week, we were out and about, saw some little people in child care at Central Elementary or something. We noticed that they were wearing their masks, still enjoying themselves, still playing and talking, keeping a lot of distance and so forth. So even today, as I was out and about, I did notice little people. They're making some fun with the masks. So we're going to do the best we can to make it a good environment. So we appreciate all that you have in place. We don't want to send a message out there that discipline is the forerunner here. It's not. It's just a matter of trying to help the little people understand how we're going to try to keep them safe while they're on the bus and while they're in our schools. But it's not a boot camp. You should say that right quick.
Well, we're teaching, and part of what we do is teaching them why and teaching them how to do this appropriately. So that's part of the education process as well.
No other questions? Move right on.
Okay, the next point is 5.06, was attendance tracking procedures. As a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, school divisions across the state and the nation have adopted a multitude of instructional plans to meet the needs of their students and communities. Here in Amherst, we have several options for students to participate in. As a result, tracking attendance has become a major hurdle for divisions to overcome. The Virginia Department of Education has given school divisions guidance on how we are to track attendance of students who attend schools in person and those who have opted for remote-only instruction. ACPS has developed attendance guidelines to be in compliance with state requirements. Ms. Marie Bertrand was on the committee that developed these guidelines for the division, and she'll update you on the specifics of the ACPS plan.
Thank you, Dr. Wells, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. So the Department of Education is requiring that we track attendance daily, regardless of the instructional modality. So our students who are in person, our students who are full-time remote, and then our students who are doing A and B days and have Fridays off, we still have to track attendance on those days when they're not actually in our buildings. In addition, our health mitigation plan requires us to track COVID-related absences, which is a change from our previous policy that just had excused and unexcused absences. The Department of Education is also requiring us to look at meaningful interactions. Meaningful interactions are defined as two-way engagement between staff and students. So it can't be something like posting in a discussion board. It has to be something where there's immediate feedback and response. For elementary students, meaningful interactions are required daily. For secondary students, they're required weekly. Most of our attendance tracking will remain the same from previous years. We will still accept notes from parents for excuses, and our reasons for excuses are the same, other than the COVID-related absences. So if you look at the second page, Holly Jennings created a wonderful document that kind of breaks down each instructional model and what it means for the different levels of students. So for our in-person learners, we will follow normal attendance procedures. On the remote days for elementary, which is Fridays, we will have a Google Meet, or there will be a phone call for those who can't do Google Meet. And that will give us both the meaningful interaction and a way to track attendance. For our secondary students, since they've already had their weekly meaningful interaction, they will complete a time log for each block of, like for each class that they're in. And then our remote learners, they will be participating in daily or weekly Google Meets depending on their grade and their needs. And that will also include the ability to call into the Google Meet via phone for those who don't have internet, so they can just be a participant by phone. If they don't have the ability to do any of that, we will have teachers who will reach out in other ways. We also have the ability to look at the timestamps in Virtual Virginia and Google Classroom for our secondary students who don't need to do a Google Meet every day. So we can track attendance that way also. We really need our parents' help to make all of this work, just like our entire plan. We need our parents to buy into this and help us with this. They will still be required to provide notes via email to excuse absences. We're going to ask that they communicate with their nurses about the reason for the absences, so we can determine what's a COVID-related absence and what is a different type of illness or need. And we really want our parents to keep our kids home when they're sick, so we can keep control over this and make sure that we have everything in order. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Board members?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. For our students that are going to be home learners, what happens if they don't log on?
So we do have,
Can't kick them out.
Yeah, we do have learners who might be learning via packet, and they can do time logs, but they could also call in to the phone calls, and we have teachers who will be reaching out to them as well.
But what if the student doesn't do it?
Then it becomes a truancy issue, and we'll just follow our normal truancy procedures.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Wells? Thank you so much.
So we would basically be having an exception to our policy for the COVID this year. So our score policy has what you approved with the JED or JED/R, I believe, tonight. But that's just our attendance, but this will be an exception to that due to COVID. As opposed to putting a policy amendment in front of you, this will be our exception to policy for this year just under COVID. Just want to understand where we were on that.
Finance report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you have at your place information regarding the 2019-2020 financial reports. I am pleased to announce that we received sales tax for June today. It's two months late. I had anticipated $93,000. It came in at approximately $264,000. So that was a nice surprise. So instead of having approximately $800,000 of year-end funds, we're having somewhere around $974,000 to carry forward, whether to use for PPE products, or if the board wishes, the board of supervisors wishes to pick up that item, then this fund can go into the CIP. I will be glad to answer any questions regarding this.
So we're digesting that good news.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Would you like for me to proceed?
No questions here, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you, Teresa. Proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you have at your place and on the board docs a memo regarding extracurricular stipends for coaches and sponsors. We want to give the opportunity, in the past we have given the stipend, regardless of when the season was, over the entire year. As you're aware, last year the season stopped, and so far this year we are doing, our coaches are meeting with students to provide support, and they are doing some activities. We're asking the board if they would like to consider the curriculum stipends being on a quarterly basis instead of over the entire year. Therefore, if for some reason we go back into phase 2 or phase 1 and we don't have a sport, then the coaching stipends would not be paid to those coaches, or a portion would be paid for the work they have done so far.
So it's important to know that we pay roughly $260,000 in extracurricular stipends. And so we had spring sports last year not do any work, and we still paid them last year with students. So we're trying to this year kind of accommodate the fact that while we want our coaches to work with our students, whether there's a season or not, if we have the ability to work with them, we think that's important, and we want to pay them for doing that. But we needed to put it in more larger increments so we could kind of
Protect ourselves against paying those large sums of money and nobody doing any of the work that comes with being a coach or a sponsor. And so what we were looking at, and you can keep going with that, I guess.
Is if our coaches and sponsors, we've had some that have worked with students, July to current. So in September, they would receive 1/4 of their stipend. For those coaches who have, and they would also have to have a health mitigation plan in place regarding their particular sport or event, such as drama or band, music. They all have to have a health mitigation plan for each individual activity, and each one of those health mitigation plans have to be approved by the athletic director as well as the principal of that school. There's documentation at the high school of the coaches and sponsors who have shown up and who have participated with students since July. We would pay those employees 1/4 of their stipend in September. Since this is new for our employees, we would recommend paying all of our employees 1/12 of their stipend in August. Give them time to realize that this would be on a quarterly basis for the remainder of the year. In September, we would pay the 5 coaches and their assistants who have worked a quarter less what they received in August. And then in December, we would pay the other quarter as long as the coaches and sponsors have met with the students.
Okay, got questions just to try to figure out how it works anyways, in general, outside of COVID. All right, so if I'm a baseball coach, do I get a stipend, say, I don't know, the baseball season ends or starts, but say in October or November or something like that. Right now, do I get it every month moving forward? Okay, so are we asking, even the months that if I don't work 3 or 4 months doing the coaching of whatever sport I do, if we go the quarter route, are we going to not pay them for the time that they're not working, even though they work during the they're supposed to be working? Does that make sense?
Yes. Every coach will have the ability, if we're in school, or they have the ability to work with kids, to earn their entire stipend.
Okay.
So if you're a spring sport coach and you maybe don't start working with students until January, right? So that person would get in, I believe it's the March, they would get half of their stipend, and then they would get the other half after that. So we would move it based on their season, so they can earn every bit of their stipend. We want them to earn all of their stipend. We just needed to put it in larger chunks, so we wouldn't be stuck where we were last year.
I got you. So looking to pay it quarterly rather than monthly.
Right.
In case, like it happened this year, where March we're just not in school anymore, and then
Nobody can be in
Okay.
You know,
And that's where I'm confused. Maybe I don't have any coffee today, so wouldn't it be easier to shut off on a monthly basis than a quarterly?
to shut it off.
I mean, because if you're paying it monthly, and they only say we go to start back in September, you pay them for September, and then God forbid we can't come back to school. So instead of paying them in a quarterly chunk in November or whatever the quarter would be, wouldn't it be you just wouldn't pay them?
there's a few months.
Yeah, that's what.
I understand.
To me, it looks like that's kind of how you were pitching it, the way I understood it. I just thought maybe if it was monthly, it would be easier to stop it rather than. And I want them to, if they do the work, I want them to get the money. Is it an easier payroll thing? Is that possibly? I mean, of course, less transactions is easier, so.
We can set it up either way, and I've talked with their payroll person that we can set up an Excel spreadsheet to do the quarterly basis, or we can tie it into their contract. What we were trying to also accomplish is if our coaches are not having any contact with students, to make it equitable, because we have coaches that are having contact with students, some 5 days a week, some 3 days a week, and some none at all. So what we were trying to make it equitable so that in November, if the baseball coach had not had any contact with students, if we paid it in the amount that you're asking, we would have paid them from September to November.
But you're saying no, we wouldn't. You're saying we would make that determination every month. Correct.
Is that the way it does now? We pay them up front now.
We pay them every month. Just, that's part of their
Is it written into the contract, or is it a separate
contract? It's a
contract?
separate contract.
Okay.
Yeah, so but you're saying that if they don't work with students that month, they don't get
That month.
that month.
Instead of waiting to the end of the quarter.
Gotcha.
And
I think
I just want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah.
Either way.
I think you do understand it, and I think that's certainly doable. And if you want us to, we can kind of put that in as an option as well. And we can kind of pick it apart a little bit in the next couple of weeks.
I tend to agree with Mr. Greiser. If we can, just a simplicity of saying, okay, I'll work in January and February. A coach can easily fill out a timesheet of the times they've with a little summary of what they've done, submit it, and get paid for that month or the 6 weeks or whatever that they've worked.
Yeah, we're still going to be faced with having to pay, say, let's talk about the spring sport person, that if they don't start working with kids until January, those checks for them will be larger because we want them to earn their whole stipend. Does that make sense? Because they wouldn't be getting any check during October, November, December.
So I think part of what I think we're confused about maybe right now, it sounds like everybody gets paid at the beginning of the school year if they're going to be coaching, no matter what they're coaching.
They get paid every single month.
What I think the part of the change is not just so much monthly or quarterly, but we pay them only for the time that they're actually working, is that right?
No, it sounds like they get paid every month for their sport, whatever.
It doesn't matter when they're sporting.
It doesn't matter. So here it is in September. If baseball is practicing, that doesn't mean they don't get paid. They still get their stipend on a monthly basis.
But why would they get more than in January?
Well, if we were trying to make it where we pay them only when they work with students,
Right.
then we wouldn't be paying them anything in October, November,
Right.
December.
Right.
So that would be more in their paycheck because we would have to prorate that. See, right now we prorate it over 12 months.
So are you
that's
saying that
what I'm
paying
saying.
them more on a monthly basis, that there's a consequence for the employer, the employee?
Say that again.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, is by paying them more because it hasn't been spread out.
Right.
It's not more than they should be
No,
getting.
no.
It's just a larger chunk going to that employee for that month.
Right.
Are there any financial consequences for the employee because they received that larger amount as
Like
opposed to
from a
the
tax
increment?
standpoint?
Correct.
I have talked with the payroll person, and what we would do, we would pay the stipends with the custodian payroll, and therefore only it would be not throw them into a higher tax bracket. So if they were paid $600, it would not be added to $3,000. It would just be based on the $600.
Do it separate checks? Is that
Separate checks, yes, sir.
It is difficult, and in some school systems, wait until a season is over and they pay that. I think Lynchburg City might be one that does that. I know Campbell County and I know Bedford.
Nelson also.
They all do 12 checks during the year, which makes it difficult in a situation like this because you're paying people before they do any work.
Right.
And so we're just trying to figure out a way to pay people for the work that they do when they do it, because it's not set in stone that they're going to be doing anything in March, April, May. We don't know that.
Is there going to be like a set amount of time they're going to spend with the students? Because what if they just put 1 hour in for that month compared to another that's putting 20 or 40 hours in?
Well, I think that's currently the case. We have some programs that spend a lot more time with students than others.
Well, we're going to put down where they have to spend a certain amount of time with that,
Not sure what that would
doing something to get paid the stipend?
I think we would want to. I think we would trust them to spend the time with the kids, but we would verify that they were doing that. That's what we were looking for.
And I believe the plans have to be approved.
That's correct.
So there is a plan in place, there is an oversight of those plans.
Yes.
So we don't have to act on this until
No,
the next one.
we won't do that.
I don't understand anything about sports most of the time anyway. So when I read this at work, I'm like, I have a lot of questions. So it's not really about sports. Got that down.
Right.
How we're paying the people.
Sure.
If somebody has a 3-month contract, they get a certain amount for that contract over 12 months. It's spread out over 12 months.
Yeah.
So have you surveyed the people that get these contracts to see what they prefer? Can we do that before the next meeting?
Good.
And maybe why they prefer it? Because I'm thinking about it from a tax standpoint. If you're used to getting a little bit of money, because taxes are on a calendar year, a little bit of money at the end of 2020 instead of a big chunk of money at the beginning of 2021, that'll change your income, won't it?
It could. Depending
So
on how
maybe
much.
people that are getting this money should have some say also.
Right, but we do want to avoid paying people the way we've been paying. So we have to
Avoid what?
paying them the way we've been paying. Just
Okay, we
because-
want to avoid that. Why?
Well, because you might end up paying people for not doing any work.
Okay. And that's why the quarterly work better, because you're looking back and capturing whether they did any work or not.
Yeah, that's what that's
Okay.
the idea. And then what you're talking about is looking back every month.
Okay.
So either way can work.
I ask for clarification. The quarterly recommendation, is it looking back for the quarter and say those that worked in that quarter will get paid, or is it saying all coaches, instead of getting paid on a monthly, will get paid quarterly?
It's
whether
who
you work
who
or
does the work. It's during that quarter.
Okay.
Who does.
Okay.
I think that's sort of what we were saying, but we were under the impression that, at least I was, that the recommendation was to pay up front, but on a quarterly basis. That's not what.
No, it's a look back. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Look back, okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see a minimum amount of time they have to spend actually with the students, coaching or something to get paid.
So maybe some sort of guide, like to cross or to make this bridge. I think what you're saying is, and again, I'm not the best with sports either, but football coach might be spending a whole lot more time with the students than a cross country coach or something like that, whatever it might be. So maybe they can help us come up with a minimum amount of time they should be spending with the kids based on their activity, and then paying them based. Okay, you met that. So.
And it is important to note, though, that stipend percentages are different for the sports. So a football coach makes more, they have a larger stipend than the golf coach.
Okay.
And it's because of the hours that are required to work. So we got to be careful not to say we expect more out of the person that gets 3%, or expect the same out of the person that gets 3% versus the person that gets 10%.
Okay.
So we want to be careful about, that's why I was a little hesitant about it. That's the only reason.
Well, I can see according to the sport, but, you know, I don't want somebody getting their full stipend if they're only putting in a half hour.
I think because we're so detail oriented and people coming in and doing work with our kids now, we're tracking all of that we will have a very good sense of what every sport or what every activity is doing. Like we know right now how often the football team has been in, who's been in, where they've been, because we got to track all this stuff now because it's part of the mitigation plan.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are keeping up with it, and we'll be able to keep up with it to make those kinds of decisions. I know it's because we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it, and especially when we're not sure what's going to happen in a month. But we don't want to pay, that's a large amount of money for our school division if people aren't doing the job that we're paying them to do.
I absolutely agree with what this up.
Yeah. But like I said to begin with, and I want our folks to understand this too, is that we want them to work with our kids, even if they're not playing the game. We want them to work with our students because we feel like that after-school activity is a great thing for our students.
And Mrs. Wright, we have not surveyed the staff, but we have had staff members in the past that football coaches that would like to have gotten their football coaching stipend at the end of the season. And because it's not something we've always done, they see their stipend over 12 months, even when they weren't doing anything.
But we will.
When does football season end? Normally?
Well, hopefully in December.
This year it's going to be.
We have no clue.
March.
And so they wanted like a quarterly payment then?
They wanted it all by the end of the season.
By the end of the
end of the
year.
season.
Yeah.
By the
So
end
by
of the-
doing it on a quarterly basis, we're actually paying it more real time.
Yes. It's more for what you've actually done. Yeah.
And the high school does have a good plan in place as far as coaches checking in and checking in their students and what each one of them are doing for the day.
Yeah, because I'm trying to relate the money to the time. I mean, how would you, well, we have a month to talk about it. I'll ask questions on email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much, just I don't think it's so much about like to start, you know, one
July.
season, you know, basketball, I'm just talking normal time, basketball practice starts before you even think about somebody's weight training. Coaches are in the weight room, coaches are sweating 24/7. That's not to say what we need to do about this, but, you know, the amount of money that we pay them, stipends they get, probably is much lower than the effort that they put in.
Absolutely.
We don't, in Amherst now, we're a sports town, we don't want to send a message out there that, you know, we don't try to teach you that you have to
That's correct.
support everything that you put on a sweatsuit.
Yeah.
Because these people put a lot of time in, hot sun and the band people out there, and whether you can make it or not, so. One is thinking about, we can bring back how we want to do it, but we don't want to use this as a throw in.
No.
Sports, people who are dedicated to coaching, assisting coaching and all that, they put in, and Amherst, I don't speak for that, they put in a lot of dedicated work. So whether it's a golf coach, or a cross-country coach, or a cheerleading coach, a lot of time invested.
Absolutely.
Sometimes these people don't go home till midnight, maybe 2 a.m. But I'm just throwing that in there. But we can bring this back. When would you like for us to consider this again, board?
It says September on here.
I
I just want to clarify that, because the paper says we have to choose between procedures or over the entire year, but we're choosing between monthly or quarterly. So is number one quarterly?
Number one is quarterly.
Number one's quarterly payments.
Or, but it also could be the way.
And what
you
does,
brought it, if it works.
the mitigation plan is in number 2, but it's not in number 1, because that's taken into account up above?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
2 is basically just doing it the way we've always
The way
done
we've always done it,
it.
okay.
And just hope we play.
Yeah.
We have seasons and things
Okay.
like that.
I feel better about the quarterly, and Ms. Thompson, would you clarify, it's a look back instead
It is
of,
a look
I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was, you were
Okay.
fronting them.
Okay.
So in the meantime, between now and September 10th, we got some more clarifications and some more information sent out to us.
Yeah. I'd like to see what the people who are affected by this think.
Sure. And we're not going to impact this month because we're just.
And if any of them are listening, not guaranteeing anything, just saying, I'd like to see what they have to say, really, truly.
Okay, we'll do
Okay.
that.
So it's a pleasure for us to get more information.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Where are we?
Instruction.
Russia. That must be Dr. Norman.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Chair, Ms. Vice Chair, and members of the board, 7.01 is an update on accountability measures, and I would just like to let you know that on August 4th, Dr. Green, our state superintendent, stated that he exercised his right under the 2020 General Assembly and waived accreditation for the 2021-2022 school year. So accreditation is waived this year, and accreditation is waived next year based on the insufficient data in order to calculate student growth in reading and in math. It will also allow schools to focus on the impact of the school closure, both academically, but to put a priority on social and emotional well-being for students and staff. And that was a priority for our state superintendent. And of course, as you know, it's been a priority of our superintendent, you as a board, and our employees here in the division. We're excited about that in regards to state accreditation. In discussions on hybrid learning, 7.02, you have in your packet 3 items. The first one is a memo that actually outlines hybrid learning, and I have provided you information that Dr. Wells and I gathered over the course of the last week, and I will already tell you numbers have changed as of this morning when we finalized this memo, and it provides you where the location of the hybrid learning will take place, the grade levels specific as to how many hybrid learners, face-to-face learners you will have building in that space, and then the number of students that will actually be participating at a single time in that space. You also have in the packet a chart that outlines, and I'll come back to the memo. You have a chart that outlines the number of students that are all remote, and you also have in that 3 pages in, those are going to be learners. The last thing in this portion of the packet is the suggested schedule or a mock schedule that I'll kind of walk through with you on that. So the first in regards to Amherst Amelon, Amherst Elementary, Central, Elon, Madison Heights, and Temperance. We have multiple schools that are able to do self-contained, where they are, the numbers of their face-to-face students are low enough to where they can self-contain in a classroom and they do not have to split their classes. And they're able to keep that because of the number of teachers that they have in the grade level and are able to spread out within the classrooms. We have several that are, as of this afternoon, in speaking with specifically Miss Scott at Elon, she's lowering her numbers and they go down daily. She is still at a place where in one of her locations, she is at 59 students in the gymnasium, but we talked earlier today in regards to an open classroom that she has, that she'll be able to move a group of students out and into that classroom. I spoke with Mr. Sales at Amelon Elementary, another area that is over the 50 count, and in his library he had 54 students that were going to be in there. He also has 3 different classrooms that have opened up because of teachers that we've pulled to help us run the Amherst Remote Academy, and he is now spreading those numbers out across those 3 those 3 classrooms plus the library. So right now we're on the cusp at Elon Elementary with that group in the gymnasium, and I believe we are under the 50 mark on each one, and then in many of them we are way below the 50 because rooms are becoming available because teachers are now moving towards the remote academy. Yes, ma'am.
I know that when we made our visits, one of the issues that we were noticing at Amelon, it sounds like that would be addressed with the extra additional rooms.
Yes, ma'am.
In the library. And then at the Elon School, we were talking about 59 in the gymnasium being able to be reduced because there's an extra room. I think another area that we were concerned about was just the cafeteria. Is there anything we can do there?
Yes, what she's done.
The number is low, but the space is small.
Right. Actually, Dr. Wells has been, and Mr. Cock have been working on some of the things that y'all had talked about earlier with partitions or curtains. We also have it to where one of the classrooms that Ms. Scott was using for services, like our Title I pullout and our special ed, I talked to her today, and if her number stays that high, she's going to be able to use that as well. We're going to find a way for her to actually pull kids into there and then do title supports in other areas. So it really is, we're just looking at the numbers. They have steadily moved from face-to-face instruction over to remote, and we'll talk about that in our next section. So I don't envision these numbers to stay there. It's just getting people to register their kids.
And I'll say this, based on our visits, Ms. Ligon and I was really pleased with
Me too.
The hybrid locations and the spacing, other than the few that we've talked about this week.
Our principals have done an excellent job. Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Along with that, you have in there, you had requested information regarding what that may look like in a hybrid location and what that may look like in the homeroom. And so we just have we had given these to teachers and administrators back in the end of July, their leadership meeting, leadership conference. And it really is about just suggested timing and activities in each of the classrooms. So K2, when we talk about what that looks like for reading and math, 80 minutes and 50 minutes, what are they going to be doing with those students at that time? Of course, morning meetings are involved in all of that. But as they tackle reading and math in one class for homeroom, what is the other half of the class doing? And they're in the hybrid location, and we've listed out different activities for them to be able to participate in. This really is something that we have tried to leave up to the building principal as well as each grade level, because it will look differently at each grade level. So we want to make sure that we give those opportunities to our teachers who are just coming into the buildings this week, where they can work with their PLCs, work with their teams, work with their special education collab teachers as well as their Title I teachers, and figure out how are we actually going to do this, and what does that look like logistically. So we've given them multiple activities, multiple ideas, and they will be presenting us with their with how they've worked it out in their grade level and school. Do you have any questions in regards to that? Okay. If you need any further information in regards to that, I'll be more than happy to keep you up to date on the numbers and how they're moving. Yes, ma'am?
I had a question on this.
Yes, ma'am.
On there, it talks about need to hire 2, need 1 more. Are those full-time teacher positions, or what
No,
positions
ma'am. Those are the positions that have been, if you look over in the gen ed paras, that's where we are actually, you had provided us the opportunity to add those 2 per elementary, and we are in the process of interviewing, hiring. So that is a process that Mr. Gallagher will update you on during his placement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next portion, 7.03, I am gonna, along with Ms. Jen Cruz and Mr. Joey Crawford, would like to present to you the Amherst Remote Academy Implementation Plan. And I just want to let you know, back several, like 3-4 weeks ago, Mr. Crawford, I called him and asked him to help us with remote learners. We pulled together several weeks worth of information in probably about 2 days. We put together an implementation plan that we have been able to roll out. What we'd like to do in the packet is the full, I believe it's 14 pages of a plan that we will be able to provide to our administrators, our teachers, those that are working in our ARA program, our families, our community. But tonight we'd like to present to you, the board, just in a short presentation. I'm going to ask Mr. Crawford to go ahead and come on up, and we can start it out. And thank you. The microphone isn't working up there, so we're going to give him a mic. And we're just going to kind of walk you through bullet points of the plan. You can read it at your leisure later when you have lots of time.
Madam Speaker, members of the board, I am honored to have been asked to be a part of the Amherst Remote Academy. I know that it's been a big undertaking for our school division, but trust that we've spent many hours planning this process, and it has been pretty well thought out. I'm going to walk you through the overview, just the general background of how it came to be, and then show you some numbers regarding the Amherst Remote Academy and online registration, and then show you the options available for those students when they're at home. So the general overview of the Amherst Remote Academy is that it was created with the idea that there are students in our county and their families who feel that it is not in their best interest to come back into our building. We wanted to give them an option to be able to still learn, receive their education while at home. So we developed the Amherst Remote Academy for that reason. Educators will be there to assist them in the process as they're going through the Amherst Remote Academy. Students are going to have 3 options as to how they can complete this coursework. The first would be 100% online if they have internet access at their home. The second would be a Chromebook that would be distributed to those students from our school division with flash drives that would also be distributed to those students. The third would be a printed packet if they choose to do paper pencil. The chart that is before you right now, we created it about 3 weeks ago. And what we wanted was we wanted some strong data to show us exactly what was going on with our online registration, but also to see exactly how many people in our county and our school division were registering for remote learning. The first thing I'm going to point out to you is the very bottom of the chart. You'll see that I updated this at 12:25 this afternoon. That number that you see in red has since changed. It is fluid. It is continuing to change as we get more and more people that are contacting our schools with changes to their selection or as they register where they weren't able to register online previously. So that number is ever changing. The first number that you see, the first column, is our enrollment at each school, and then the bottom line in blue, that is school division. So as we work across the numbers, you'll see how many students in the second column have registered online. So I'll give you the high school, for example. Out of 1,216 students, 977 of them have registered online. Of those 977 students, 376 have chosen to be remote learners. So as you work across, the pink center column right there will be the number of students that will actually be face-to-face. At the high school, there's 840 students. And given that they're on an AB schedule, you would divide that in half per day. As you look over, I'm going to ask you to look over to the further column where it says enrollment right there on the top. 33% down at the bottom in the blue is the number that we're at right now of our entire enrollment who has chosen to go remote. The number over there to the right, almost 80% have registered online. That number has increased over the course of the last few days, and we're very thankful for our principals reaching out to families and to students. And I know that there's been a lot of work during and after hours to try to get the students registered and working with those families. So thank you to the other principals in the division for their help with that as well. The last 2 numbers on the right are the numbers of our secondary ARA and our elementary ARA. So in the secondary, which would combine the middle schools and the high school, there are 732 members of our school division, students, that will be a part of our secondary Amherst Remote Academy. 629 elementary students have chosen to go remote. So the first option, as we look through the 3 options for our students in this Amherst Remote Academy, would be completely online. In just a little bit, Ms. Smith and Mr. Maddox will show you Virtual Virginia and Google Classroom. Those will be the platforms that we will use. Virtual Virginia will be the majority of what we do, but there are courses that Virtual Virginia does not offer that we offer. So we will develop Google Classrooms to use those for those classrooms. Professional development is currently being conducted by our teachers and by the rest of our staff. That has been going on since June of the summer. So we've been working tirelessly to try to train our teachers and staff on utilizing Virtual Virginia and Google Classroom. The content that's going to be presented for our students will be available weekly. So we're not going to open up the classes in September and say you have until December to finish. So we're going to offer the work weekly so that way we can focus on a little more information, on a smaller piece of information, so it's not overwhelming for students and their families as well, because this is very new for our students and for our families at home. The second option will be Chromebooks and flash drives. There's no secret in Amherst County that we do not have 100% reliable internet all over. And so there are many families that do not have internet access right now. So what we would do is we would provide every student in the Amherst Remote Academy the option of having Chromebooks and flash drives. Those flash drives would be labeled and they would be delivered to those students, and they would be filled with the information that they would be able to download on their Chromebook and on their flash drive. They would then fill in the work they've completed on their flash drive and return it back to the school in order to be graded. Those flash drives would be delivered. We have lock boxes that we're actually going to place at the schools, on the outside of the schools, where students and their families can come to the school, drop the flash drive in the lock box, and then go on their way. Principals will then be asked at their individual schools to unlock the boxes, flash drives inside, and we have people that will be as part of our personnel that will pick up the flash drives and then deliver them where they need to be. Additional needs, as this comes up, they'll be met in order to allow students to turn in work if that doesn't work for that individual student. The third option will be paper and pencil packets. It's just common knowledge that for some people that is just easier. It's just easier for them to have paper packets in front of them and to be able to write things out. It's easier for the student. It's easier for the family members that are going to be working with these students at home. So we are going to offer that as well. Coursework will be printed by the personnel in our ARA. They will be delivered to the schools where those students reside, and the students and their families will be able to come to the school to pick up the packet, and we will have designated times where they will be able to do that. Okay, we're thinking maybe Fridays where there wouldn't be as many people in the building, they would be comfortable coming to school. The paper packets would be the same form as the virtual learning, where they would be on a week-to-week basis. One thing about paper packets is because of the printing of the papers, they would be a week behind everybody else in terms of what they would be able to get, because the information that you would download on the flash drives would be placed on a Friday for students to come for the weekend and download. Students wouldn't be able to get that information until the following week if they were printed, just because of the resources that we're using and the time that it takes for that.
Thank you. If you'll click through for me while Ms. Cruz comes on up. I'm going to talk on personnel. Mr. Gallagher and myself and another team actually worked through the instructional personnel selection and assignments. The teacher-student ratio that we were able to determine, we received some guidance from the state on our SOQs, but basically it was a determination of what we felt comfortable with. We couldn't max out, but we wanted to make sure that it didn't overwhelm our teachers, it didn't overwhelm our parents. It was something for our students. So at secondary level, we have a 1 to 55 or 75 teacher-student ratio, meaning that a secondary teacher right now at the state max is 125 for a core content. The number of students you can have on your caseload. In a remote environment where we know that this is new for them, we're trying to keep it under 75 for that core English, math, reading, history, science. And at elementary, 1 to 35 or to 55, so one teacher to 35 students, up to 55, no more than 55 at the elementary grade levels. We have the leadership team has been working with building administration to make sure that we were able to select the teachers that, first of all, needed to go into a remote environment, and second, that had the expertise of that as well. Right now, if you click it for me, right now we have 46 teachers that are full-time 100% ARA program, and we have 17 secondary teachers who are going to be hybrid, that they will have both remote ARA assigned students as well as face-to-face students, and this is for our CTE program and our elective programs. And then as the numbers increase, as we have already seen, anytime we get to a grade level or grade band that has 30 students or more at the entry level, we would need to assign a full-time ARA teacher towards that elementary. And then the individual sections that we would need at the secondary level, the more students that come out of the building, the more flexibility we have with allowing teachers to do remote as well. This is actually the employment placement right now. That's just a chart with all of the people in their job designations right now in the administrative piece. And then the next slide is the employment placement. Go back one, please. Oh, I don't know where it went to. In your printed packet, there is a chart in there that actually has it by elementary content, elementary resource, secondary core, secondary CTE, as well as pre-K through 12 special education. And it's the number of teachers that we have actually pulled in regards to the placement for that. So that's the 46 teachers that we have out there. And Ms. Cruz? Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, Crawford or something, that's on option 3. I'm sorry. From K through 3, are they going to be doing something on paper or like they did in the past, you know? I don't know if I heard that or not. The little people.
Yeah. K through 3, parents do have the option to check out every single student is going to get a Chromebook, a charger, and a flash drive. Parents do have the option, and the teacher will be contacting them. Do you want that paper pencil for those kindergarten students? I will tell you that we would probably recommend that. It's children of that young age, especially pre-K, K and 1, are going to need that. And that's an option that those teachers, and we've been working with those teachers to be able to provide that. So yes, ma'am.
So the parents will be aware that they have the option of leaning toward paper and pencil for the little time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I apologize for that.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board. Ms. Ligon, I can speak to that a little bit as well. I've had the opportunity, because our numbers have increased, to oversee the elementary end, and a lot of the phone conversations, emails that I've had have been revolving around the option of that paper pencil packet, just to give our parents the opportunity to work side by side with their student and follow along. So that has been a lot of conversation revolving around that. We have 5 major elements of the remote learning environment, and Mrs. Petrone covered quite a bit of that for us earlier, but our focus was students are learning asynchronously or independently. Communication model and expectations have been set for our ARA teachers, whether that be for elementary, where they're reaching out on a daily basis in some form of communication, or a weekly basis for our secondary students in some format. The attendance-based model and the assessments required will be followed the VDOE guidance. And courses offered will be through that Virtual Virginia/Canvas platform and created by our ACPS teachers in Google Classroom to meet the needs of our students in an equitable fashion. Listed here, you'll see the Virtual Virginia and Google Classroom courses offered at the elementary level and offered at the middle school level. You'll see that our 4 content areas are covered in each of these components. And grades K through 2 and 3 through 5 will be covered elective-wise through STEM. Health and PE will be covered through the Google Classroom platform. At the middle school level, you have all of your core content covered as well. And Health and PE will be covered through Google 6 through 8 and STEM Academy as well. These are our high school courses listed. You can see that there are several on here, but I'd like to point out that our team has done a phenomenal job of providing electives as options for those virtual learners, or remote learners, I should say. Done a phenomenal job of offering additional electives that our students can still reach out and take, even though they've chosen the remote model. The instructional delivery method for our students. The remote instructional model will include teachers assigned, teacher-paced, and personalized with guided practice. So we are continuing to work with our teachers. We are through our first week with our ARA teachers, and we're continuing to work diligently. I'd like to commend Mrs. Cassisi on the work that she's done with our ARA teachers on site this
week. She's done a phenomenal job jumping in and working with everybody this week. But she's provided a platform, and she's held a faculty meeting already with those folks, and she's done a great job. Virtual Virginia on the platform of Canvas. Canvas is very user-friendly and offers several options to our students and our teachers to provide feedback and gain feedback on all learning materials. The ARA instructor feedback on assignments and the student communication with ARA instructor is also, it is an expectation set, but it does, again, the Canvas platform provides a variety of options in that. Our teachers' responsibilities, the expectations don't change for us, whether we're remote or face-to-face, that we're going to provide high-quality lessons for all students. And again, all staff is currently working on those models, whether it be through SEL lessons or through the academic instructional model. Provide appropriate accommodations for all students with disabilities, students with Section 504 plans, and ELL students. It has been at the top of the agenda throughout this entire process to provide for our students in any capacity or learning format that they use. Our teachers will have regular office hours set, and that is Monday through Friday. Communicate regularly with students and families. Again, that is the model and the expectation. And I think that we proved to do a really good job in March when we stepped out with the communication model, and that expectation is continued to be set and will be held at high standard throughout this process. And we participate in professional development. We'll have the opportunity on Fridays along with along with PLC meetings to participate in professional development to help our teachers and students continue to grow in the best fashion. The student responsibilities, schedule appropriate time for learning, check the online platform daily, engage in online learning resources, and submit all assignments by their due dates. We know that this is a learning curve, so our teachers will be flexible in nature and send out reminders, but we know that this is a routine that will have to be established and developed, especially through this remote model. The family responsibilities are to maintain communication with your students' teachers. So the expectation is if you've set a schedule with that teacher that you're reaching out to them and you're saying, hey, this may not be working for me this week, or whatever it may be, instead of not communicating and not reaching out so that the student is able to get everything that they need in that remote model. Monitor the division communication. I think we do an excellent job in this division of sending out social media posts and doing lots of things, creating lots of avenues for communication. So again, the expectation is that they will tune in and respond in that fashion. Ensure student participation in learning activities. It's not the expectation of our division for our parents to teach our students. We just want them to support the students at home so that we can aid and guide that instruction with them. Monitor student progress and engagement. Again, checking grades, etc., to make sure that your students are doing their work. And provide time for learning, physical activity, and play. Again, resetting that model. It doesn't mean that they sit in front of a computer for hours and hours, or they sit with a paper pencil packet. Again, providing structure so that when we do return, the students are using that format. I'm sorry. The technology elements for remote instruction, again, we have Google Classroom, which is phenomenal, Canvas, which is extremely user-friendly, the Google Meet platform, and Gmail, Google Mail. Devices and usage, we have providing a Chromebook, charger, and flash drive for all remote learners, and we will have a countywide distribution day set up prior to returning to school to ensure that all remote learners have the opportunity to get all materials that they would need to begin their school year on time in an effective fashion. Any technical support, we have been reaching out to provide technical support, sort of like a help desk for our ARA students who may need that. Acceptable use and damage to devices, we will still sign an acceptable use policy and have the ability to reach out if you have any damage to your device so that we can ensure that we're getting you back on track. And training will be provided by ACPS for all students and families. We are in the process of creating a handbook. It's a user guide essentially to where it provides avenues for the parents, the students, the families to receive additional training and help as they take this journey with us. And I do say with us because we're all learning something new every day. But as they take this journey with us through the process of learning the avenue for remote learning and what's going to work best for our students.
Thank you,
Turn it
Ms.
back to
Cruz.
Dr. Norma.
Okay, so just to kind of lay the organizational structure out, thank you. We have Joey Crawford, who is overseeing our 6 through 12 secondary. Working with him is Mr. Seeger Jordan, who is going to oversee CTE and elective programs within secondary STEM programs for middle school 6 through 12. At the site of Manellison Middle School, where we have 4 classrooms that are available there that Dr. Wells has provided us. We then have Ms. Jen Cruz, who is overseeing our pre-K through 5 as well, and she has Ms. Amanda Cassisi, who is going to be working with her in a division administrative lead position. With those teachers at AEC, Mr. Penn has provided us 2 rooms there where we will have the teachers come to. And then we have Christy Mason Cup, who is our instructional lead at the high school for those teachers who are providing us sections instead of doing a duty in the hallway, because we hopefully nobody's going to be in the hallway, that they will be using that duty period to have a caseload of ARA and be there for instructional support as well. That is the framework that we have in place to provide supports to our teachers, making them a community among themselves, because if we know that we put them together, they can talk to each other and collaborate and run PLCs based on their remote learning that they have to do. And it's different from that face-to-face instruction, and we wanted to give them that collaborative setting. Any questions regarding our ARA program? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have some. So one distinction I think we can make is it is definitely not the same as spring.
You're absolutely right.
Which I think we did a great job in spring, in such short notice. But parents aren't going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting like we did in the spring. And it's more of a scheduled curriculum. And what do you think about parents' concerns that if you go all remote, my kid's going to fall behind? Our educators are reaching out to parents and watching that, but there seems to be concern that they'll fall behind the kids who are getting face-to-face instruction.
Yeah. I really don't. The best place for a child to be right now is with a teacher face-to-face. That's just what we know is good practices. However, we know that there are many of our children, especially those with high risk, that cannot do that. So we know that we're going to be able to provide the instruction that they need and the supports that they need. So the state has been very specific on how much a teacher needs to reach out, what that looks like, what meaningful communication and engagement is, and samples of that. So our teachers this week are getting, well, for the next 3 weeks, thank you for the extra week, are getting training on what it looks like in a remote atmosphere. We're working with the Virginia Department of Education in regards to the assessment for PALS, which is a huge concern in regards to early learning, early childhood learning, getting reading and math, so VKRP assessments, and they are still at the state level figuring out those parameters for us to use, but we'll be using those guidance as well.
Okay. So that's something for the parents to hear, that there are guidelines. It's not left to the individual teachers.
Absolutely.
There's a checklist that they have to do. Okay, so I have several more things, Madam Chair. There was something, so we can be assured, or parents could be assured, that just because we're getting a pass on accreditation, nobody's letting anybody fall behind on that, because we don't want to catch up in a couple of years. So as far as registering online, people can still do that. Is there a deadline? Are we cutting it off at some point?
They can. What we have done is registration on the online is open. You can go in, and we want them to go in completely finished their registration process.
Okay.
Whether they started it just to select remote or not. Our remote deadline was last Friday, I believe. It cut it off, but we have information on there where if they still choose to go remote, they need to contact Ms. Cruz if they are elementary, Mr.
Okay.
Crawford if they are secondary, and then they are contacting the administration, and the administration is actually putting that back into Power School. So
Okay.
they still have the opportunity to go remote. They just have to, they have to actually make that phone call now.
Okay. And when you make your choice after school starts, are you locked into that choice or?
We have a 15-day grace period.
Okay.
Where students who may be face-to-face may not feel comfortable in that environment, or their parents may not, and can go to remote. The one we do know is that if they are moving from remote back into the school, they hopefully understand that they cannot expect that to happen, tell us on Monday, and expect that to happen on Tuesday, because we still have to meet the guidelines of social distancing that are under our health mitigation plan. And so they will stay remote until we can figure out how to get them on the bus and the right social distancing, and how to get them into the classroom on the right social distancing. And so I just ask parents to be cognizant of that when they make those moves back and forth, and then it has to be tracked by the state. Anytime a student goes from remote to face-to-face or back again, and as many times as they do that throughout the year.
Okay. And the last thing is, I know it's a fluid thing, but is there an ETA on schedules for the students?
Well, Dr. Brown.
Well, that's exactly why we need to know who's doing what.
I know.
And that's become the real dance at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no ETA? No, okay.
We know that we have to have it to you before the virtual open event. But,
okay.
So you know what teachers you have.
Okay.
But the high school master schedule has changed 6 times.
Oh.
And I will tell you that it usually takes 2 or 3 months to do a master schedule at the high school. So our team up there has worked amazing. They're up there all day and night. So
I can imagine so. Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
Piggybacking on that registration question, it looks like roughly about 80% have committed to some kind of education. Do we know what's going on with the 20s? Is this typical in a year? Okay.
yes, sir, it is. We have asked our administrators, and they have done a fantastic job to actually call every single family member who has not done a complete online registration, and they are continuing that process, and even to make sure that they help them fill it out if they don't have internet access. We've also issued out paper copies for them if they needed that, and then they just return that to us here or at the school to where we can get that in.
And then all of our CTE kind of and vocational programs, they're still on track, I mean, as normal. I mean, there's nothing that's been affected where they can't, we're not going to lose that want to take welding or auto shop or something like that, or, I mean, it's...
The one thing that we do know, and this is across the state, sir, is that I cannot offer a welding 3 student remote welding 3.
Right.
So we are in the process, once we get the master schedule finalized, to be able to have our school counselors contact each of those students who have selected a course that just cannot be taught online or remotely. And we have provided as many elective options in the CT area as well as our fine arts that will allow them a different option or selection, at least for the first semester, until we can figure out what this looks like for the second semester. Because they may end up doing, Intro to Culinary Arts is what they selected. Well, I I don't think I, or culinary arts 3, I can't do that remotely, but I might be able to do that second semester. So we know that we're going to give them options for what they can do the first semester, and we're just going to try to play it as it falls out.
Thank you.
And that's going to help us by moving to the block. So add
Sure, to give
semester
more
they
time.
get for
Absolutely.
courses, so that'll help a lot with that.
Just a couple. First, thanks to everybody. An amazing plan. And even just working with that CTE is difficult. Sounds like you've got some good ideas though with those extra classrooms. A couple of questions. One, students that are doing free and reduced lunch, are we providing any type of food for them if they're in remote? What does that look like?
So for our remote learners that are free reduced, right as it stands now, we have set up for them to be able to come to the school, a caregiver to come to the school and pick up meals. We cannot deliver meals out to the community because our buses are now delivering students back and forth to school, so I don't have the buses to run meals out. But we'll have meals available in the main office area. They can pick up, and we're getting time set out now to families, so we're looking at between like 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock. They can come to the school and pick up a lunch and a breakfast for the following day. So we'll have those meals in the office. They'll have to come check into the office. We'll give them the meal in a bag, and they'll take it home. They'll give them a lunch and a breakfast for the next day, or 2 days, whichever days they want to get. We can provide that for them.
Thank you. And then next, if a parent is choosing to be in the remote academy for their children, they have a desire to participate in any of the sports, is that being permitted?
It is.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
is, yeah.
And two, some parental questions about if they can come to school for instruction and then during the hybrid program, if they could go to the remote academy for that. What
Yes.
type of response are we getting on that one?
Yes, ma'am. We've only had several parents ask in regards to that. We've asked them to contact their school administrator, but each of the administrators know that if a parent chooses to have their child on site for reading and math, which are in the home-based homeroom, then the rest of the day come and get them, so they won't be in that large hybrid location. They are allowed to do that. The attendance does count, and then the homeroom teacher would be the person responsible for those activities that are done remotely. And so I have a plan and.
Would be done the same as they would for the remote academy?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Then I noticed in here, we talk a lot about, students with disabilities and their services. I had thought to ask about our ELL services. We have, one ELL teacher?
2. Yes, ma'am.
So we feel that that load is enough between the virtual and the face-to-face as well?
Yes, ma'am. We're actually pulling the numbers on that to see where we stand in regards to the number of ELL students that we have. And I don't see that we haven't changed their caseload. And we have a system called Language Line, which allows us to have interpreters that parents can actually call in and get interpret whatever language it is that they need. And so that's going to be very helpful for our remote learners in that capacity.
And then this is just simple. I know you've laid out the different ways that they can come and get instruction with the flash drive. With the capabilities of the Chromebook, can they come to the school and just download it through our Wi-Fi? They don't necessarily have to have a flash drive, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
We had Dr. Arnold practice that.
And then the last question, I know we were looking at about 4,100 for our enrollment.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that registered already?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
So if we've only got 80% registered, we're at 4,100 already?
No, I
Oh.
don't think that's right.
No.
Say that again?
Okay, 4,100 students.
That's how many we have
Enrolled.
enrolled, but not registered.
enrolled
Right.
but not registered?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. So the 80% is of those that are enrolled?
Yes,
You've
ma'am.
heard from them? Okay. I was just sort of thinking, oh my gosh, that's a lot of students, so. But even at 4127,
That's better too,
still,
right?
what, we're
Yeah.
up like 200 students, so it's good.
Any additional questions?
Yes, so I know at the high school and middle schools, we got Fridays set aside for learning at home, but if the student needs remedial help, they could set up something to get with a teacher. If we have a student who's going through the ARA program and they need some additional assistance, falling behind in a class, can they set up something through their homeschool to get that done, taken care of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, we're asking them to go through their ARA teacher.
Gotcha.
So we have at each site a room that's set aside for any instruction that would need to be remedial interventions or anything like that, that they can come in if their parents approve that.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, so one of the things that Mr. Maddox and Ms. Smith, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that happened tonight, now that we have talked to you about the hybrid learning place and we have talked to you about the ARA program, I wanted you to kind of see what was going on and what a student will see when they talk about this remote environment and what it looks like. Mr. Maddox is overseeing our Google Classroom and what that looks like for our CTE electives and resource teachers. And then Ms. Wanda Smith is going to follow him, showing you what Canvas and Virtual Virginia looks like to students and to parents and what kind of training and professional development we have for that. Mr. Maddox?
Madam Chair, members of the board, have you heard in some of the other things here, CTE, fine arts, and some of our elective programs, Virtual Virginia does not support those. So we're going to use Google Classroom. Everybody's pretty familiar. A lot of our teachers and stuff are pretty familiar with Google and Google Classroom. Our ITRTs started this week. They've really been working hard with our teachers and training. They're doing an awesome job. We created a Google Gurus. We understand that the ITRTs we only have 3, and they rotate through buildings, except at the high school. So we wanted to give our students and our teachers and our parents more support with the virtual learning. So we recruited several of teachers to become our Google Gurus. So we had training with them yesterday, and then on Monday they're going to do further training with all of our teachers that are using the Google platform. Right now, I'm a Microsoft guy, so right now I'm in a Google Classroom and I'm a student with Miss Jennifer Harrison, our ITRT at the high school. She has created, and this is actually what our teachers are going to go through. But what you're looking at is a student view of how a student would go in once they sign into the Google Classroom. So this is the name of the course, the teacher, of course, and then this is actually the streaming page where they can put announcements here, basically. She's got here, before you begin, please look at the video. I did follow those directions when I started the class. But then when you look at the classwork, you see she has everything set up in task. And again, this is what our teachers are going to go through. These 12 modules. And they go through everything through Google Suite, Classroom, Meet, Google Docs, Slides, all of it. Your topics over here, that's kind of how things are separated within the Google Classroom. If you choose, let's say this task, so this would be an assignment. You know this is a due date because this is a self-paced course. So teachers can go in and it's self-paced for them. But our teachers, when they actually use, they'll put the assignment date, when it's due, and all that information in there. So you notice here, she's got all the different directions, but you also have videos. So you can embed videos, download charts, whatever you need, into the classroom. So right now, you hear it ties in with your Google Calendar. Right now, I'm signed in as Miss Smith. She's got a whole lot of other stuff to show you. But the Google Drive folder would have all the materials and everything that the students need. And right now, our ITR team is working on putting together all the resources so we can actually have resources for parents and students where they can, for the virtual piece at home. And then we also are building something for all of our teachers for professional development, because this is going to be a continuing thing. Right now, we're just trying to get the teachers set up so they can get into the classrooms and load their assignments, which they'll be able to do starting hopefully next week with the social and emotional learning piece. And then after that, it's just we're going to continue to learn and continue to build. I'm learning every day because, like I said, I'm a Microsoft Office guy. So the ITRTs are trying to switch me to Google, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Any questions on Google Classroom?
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Maddox. Now, Ms. Smith is going to walk you through briefly on Canvas and Virtual Virginia, so you kind of have an idea of what that looks like as well.
Bear with me. You're welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and board members. I'm going to walk you through a student view of what Virtual Virginia will look like for all of our students. First, let you know that the platform offers our course offerings. We will be having all our core content in there for math, science, history, and reading, as well as honors courses, PE for 9th and 10th grade, and foreign language will also be offered on the platform. So what I'm going to do is I've logged into Canvas already. And this is what the platform would look like from a teacher's viewpoint. It'll have all their courses blocked off on a dashboard. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to turn this slightly so I can get a better view. I'm going to scroll down so any teacher can always see what their course might look like from a student view. So I'm going to start you off with a kindergarten course. And I'm going to go down so we can see student view. So if a kindergarten student was logging into this course, we're going to ask that all teachers have a home page. This one hasn't been developed to have a home page yet, but you'll see one at the secondary level. The home page will have contact information for the teacher, email, classroom expectations, things about routines, helpful hints for parents, and clear guidance. We're going to ask that all teachers designate what day of the week certain assignments will fall under, and that way when a child goes in, even with their parent, they know specifically what they're supposed to be doing for that week on each day of the week. So if we went into a Monday assignment as a student, this is on SOL Kindergarten 5.5, which is one about reading and being able to interpret signs. So, and you notice the print is very large. We made that accessible for students. This one's about reading signs that they see in everyday life. There is a component that you can enable, which would read the script aloud to the student as well as they're going through this. This hasn't been enabled because this is a practice course. They would go next, and then it would go into the content, more learning and descriptive information about the task that for the day. This one would be an application, so it's going to be something that a student would need to do. For this one, they have PDFs, and when the student clicks on this, it automatically gets downloaded to their Chromebook. Now, they would not have to print this out. We are going to make sure that all directions are very explicit and that they can write their responses on loose leaf paper or whatever they have available in their home at the time to put their response on. If they want to type it on their Chromebook, and this is what this actual assignment would look like. So on a piece of paper, they would probably draw blocks and put a description or some type of writing about what they think that symbol or that item represents to them. So if they wanted to turn this in, they could actually type their responses on a piece of paper, and then they could send it in to their school by email or drop it off. Or when they come back to school one day for face-to-face instruction, they could also type it on a Word document on the Chromebook, and that way they could upload it directly into Canvas itself, or they can put it on the flash drive and deliver it that way to their teacher. And that is how they would maneuver through as a kindergarten student. And then right here, they have a simple check for understanding or practice, and it's like 3 questions where they would answer true or false about what the picture's telling. And again, they can enable the read aloud on this as well, so it can be read to them as they're working. I'm going to leave the student view on that one, and now we're going to go back to the dashboard, and I'll pick a secondary level course, and this is biology. Again, I'm going to scroll down so I can see this from a student view. This one is an intro page. This one has an intro page done by Mr. Smith, and he's put his information in, even his office hours and how he can contact. I'm actually going to trainings with teachers on Monday. Beginning on Monday, I'll be doing a virtual training, a 3-part training with all teachers in the entire county. And when they finish with it, they will have their homepage already set up to welcome students and be ready to implement in all their courses that they're going to be offering. As you scroll through it, we're going to go straight to the modules so that they know what tasks are available for them. The same setup that we had at the elementary, we're going to ask teachers to do the same thing at the secondary level. Designate your modules by weeks. Be specific about what a student should be doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. The classes will be split by sections, so there will be a section for A students and section for B students. That way it doesn't get cross-referenced and it won't confuse the teacher. They'll know which tasks will be assigned for students that come on A days and which tasks should be labeled and assigned for students on B days. So it'll be totally separate to make it easy for the teacher to maneuver through it. And just to give you an idea of what's inside the courses for one, we can look at one. This would be the introduction for objectives. And like I said, it's tailored for an older student, so the writing is smaller, but that can always be adjusted if they wanted to make it larger. That's totally depending on the teacher and what their students need. It gives lots of content. This one has interactive applications as well, and it has graphic organizers to help with students' understanding, review of terms. Now, some of the applications, like you'll click on it, and it'll be something something that they might have to review, like definitions. And I think this one has video. Now, the nice thing about the videos in here, I can click it and actually play it right here in the device, but if I click it right here, it will download the video to my Chromebook immediately. I can view it at a later date. If I click here, it gives me an interactive application, and that is kind of like answer what term, and the student would answer each question and move on to. Well, I would have got a bad grade on that one, right? But that's now something like this may not download to a student's Chromebook, so a teacher might want to put a supplemental activity in there that would be a choice for the student. So that way they weren't at their, if it wasn't able to be downloaded or something happened, they have an alternate activity. So some activities we're going to make sure we have choice with, because some things in Virtual Virginia are very easy to download to a Chromebook and some are not as friendly. So part of what we're going to be doing when we look, they can type in on their computer and it will